Scan Master Vexthal's tertiary eye cluster dilated in confusion as the data streams cascaded across her neural interface. The holographic display before her flickered with readings that defied everything she had learned in her 4 decades of service aboard the Chromath Hegemony's finest intelligence vessel, the Infinite Scrutiny. "Impossible," she whispered in the clicking language of her people, her mandibles trembling. "Run the scan again, full spectrum, triple redundancy protocols." Her subordinate, Junior Analyst Krenak, manipulated the sensor controls with practiced efficiency, his carapace gleaming under the bridge's bioluminescent lighting. "Scan Master, I've already run it 7 times. The results are consistent." Vexthal's head tendrils coiled tightly against her skull, a sign of deep distress among the Chromoth. In the view screen ahead, the human warship hung in the void like a predator at rest. It was designated HTNS Indomitable, according to their translation matrices, a destroyer-class vessel of the Terran Colonial Navy. Not particularly large by galactic standards, merely 800 meters in length, and its design was almost primitive in its brutal simplicity. Angular, utilitarian, covered in what appeared to be reactive armor plating and studded with weapon ports. But it was what lay inside that vessel that had turned Vexthal's ordered universe upside down. "Deploy the analysis," she commanded, her voice steadier than she felt. The holographic display expanded, showing a 3-dimensional cross-section of the human ship. Krenak highlighted the anomalous sections in pulsing crimson. "Here," he indicated, "the power core. Our scans detect a fusion reactor operating at temperatures that should cause immediate containment failure. The magnetic bottles are fluctuating in patterns that violate the Kelthery principles of plasma dynamics. By all rights, that reactor should have exploded approximately 37,000 times per second." Vexthal studied the data. He was correct. The reactor was an abomination to physics as she understood it. "And here," Krenak continued, highlighting the ship's weapons systems, "these kinetic accelerators, what the humans call railguns. The electromagnetic fields required to achieve the velocities we detected should be creating feedback loops that would tear the weapons apart. The structural stresses are beyond any known materials tolerance." "Perhaps their materials science is more advanced than we assumed," Vexthal suggested, though even as she spoke, she knew it was insufficient explanation. "That's what I thought initially," Krenak replied, "but look at the composition analysis. It's steel, Scan Master, iron refined with carbon. One of the most basic structural materials in the galactic database. It shouldn't even be holding together under the gravitational stresses of acceleration, let alone the weapons discharge." Vexthal felt a chill run through her central nervous cluster. "Show me the life support systems." Krenak's manipulator limbs moved with increasing agitation. "That's the worst part. The atmospheric mixture they're breathing would be toxic to 97% of known sapient species. 21% oxygen. That's enough to cause oxidative cellular damage in most carbon-based life forms. And the pressure. Scan Master, they're maintaining nearly 1 full standard atmosphere of pressure throughout the ship. That level of oxygen at that pressure creates a fire hazard that's nearly unmanageable. 1 spark in the wrong place, and the entire ship should become an inferno." "Yet it functions," Vexthal observed quietly. "Yet it functions," Krenak echoed. "And there's more. The crew." A new display materialized, showing the biological scans of the humans aboard the Indomitable. Vexthal leaned closer, her primary eyes focusing intently. 342 individual life signs, Krenak reported, all of them registering stress indicators that, in any other species, would indicate imminent system failure. Elevated heart rates, some beating over 100 times per minute. Cortisol and adrenaline levels that should indicate panic, and yet their behavior patterns suggest they're simply going about their duties. Vexthal's analytical mind raced through possibilities. Could they be in distress? Battle-ready status? No, Scanmaster. According to their comm traffic, which our linguistic AIs have been parsing, they're at what they call Condition 3, a routine patrol state. What we're seeing is their baseline. Show me their command crew. The display zoomed in on the ship's bridge. 5 humans were present, their biosigns highlighted. One stood at the center, presumably the commander. Captain Elizabeth Chen. Kreenak read from the translated data. 43 Terran years old. Current heart rate, 84 beats per minute. Blood pressure, elevated but stable. Chemical analysis indicates recent consumption of a stimulant compound they call coffee. He paused. Scanmaster, this compound is mildly toxic. They drink it voluntarily, regularly. Vexthal would have laughed if the situation weren't so disturbing. They poison themselves for recreation? For alertness, apparently. It's a cultural practice across their entire species. For a long moment, Vexthal simply stared at the display. The Chromath hegemony had encountered 17 sapient species in their expansion across the galaxy. Some were more technologically advanced, others less so. Some were peaceful, others aggressive. But all of them operated within the understood boundaries of physics, chemistry, and biology. These humans, they seemed to exist in defiance of those boundaries. Recommendation? She asked Kreenak. Her subordinate's carapace darkened, a sign of uncertainty. Unknown, Scanmaster. The hegemony has established protocols for first contact with inferior species, peer species, and superior species. But humans, he gestured at the impossible readings. They don't fit any category. Their technology is primitive, but it functions in ways that should be impossible. Their biology is fragile, yet they thrive in conditions that would kill most others. I don't know what we're dealing with. Vexthal made a decision. Open a communication channel. Let's speak to these impossible creatures directly. Part 2. The Dialogue. The communication request was answered within moments. Another curiosity. Most species required at least a brief deliberation period before responding to contact from an unknown vessel. The humans simply answered. The view screen flickered, and Captain Elizabeth Chen appeared. She was smaller than Vexthal had expected. Humans were a compact species, it seemed, with pale skin and dark hair bound tightly against her skull. Her eyes were a striking blue, and they assessed the Chromoth Scanmaster with an intelligence that was immediately apparent. This is Captain Chen of the Terran Colonial Navy ship Indomitable, she said, her voice rendered into Chromath clicking through the translation matrix. You've been shadowing us for the past 6 hours. I assume you're ready to talk now? Vexthal felt her tertiary eye cluster widen in surprise. You detected our presence? Chen's face made an expression that the translation software identified as amused. Commander, you're running active scans on my ship with enough intensity to light up every sensor board in the fleet. Of course we detected you. We've been waiting to see if you were hostile or just curious. Just curious, Vexthal assured her, feeling oddly off balance. The Infinite Scrutiny was equipped with the hegemony's finest stealth systems. They should have been effectively invisible. I am Scan Master Vexthal of the Kromov Hegemony vessel, Infinite Scrutiny. We mean no harm. We are conducting research. Scanning my ship without permission, Chen observed, her tone mild but pointed. In human space, that's generally considered rude. But I'll let it slide this once, given that this appears to be our first contact with your species. What did you want to know that your scans didn't tell you? Vexthal decided on directness. Captain Chen, our scans indicate that your vessel is operating with multiple critical system failures. Your reactor is unstable, your weapons are exceeding material tolerances, and your crew is exhibiting signs of biological distress. Yet you claim to be on routine patrol. I wanted to understand this contradiction. To Vexthal's confusion, Captain Chen's expression shifted to one the translator identified as genuine amusement. The human made a barking sound. Laughter, the database supplied. "I'm sorry," Chen said, recovering her composure. "It's just critical failures? Commander, the Indomitable is operating at peak efficiency. We passed our last inspection with flying colors. What exactly do your scans say is wrong?" Kreenak transmitted the technical data, and Vexthal watched as Chen reviewed it, her eyes moving rapidly across her own displays. "Ah," Chen said after a moment. "I see the confusion. Commander Vexthal, I think we're looking at a fundamental difference in engineering philosophy. Let me show you something." Chen gestured off-screen, and another human appeared, a tall male with graying hair and oil stains on his uniform. "This is Chief Engineer Marcus Torres," Chen introduced. "Chief, can you explain to our new friends why our reactor isn't about to explode?" Torres grinned, another expression of amusement. "Sure, Captain. Commander Vexthal, is it? Okay, so you're seeing the reactor fluctuations and thinking instability, right? That's because you're measuring it against what I'm guessing is your own reactor design philosophy, which probably emphasizes steady-state operations. Consistent plasma temperature, minimal flux in the magnetic containment. Am I close?" "That is correct," Vexthal confirmed, impressed despite herself. "That is the only logical approach to fusion management." "Logical for you, maybe," Torres replied cheerfully. "But see, we figured out early on that steady-state fusion requires exotic materials for the containment systems, stuff that's expensive and hard to manufacture. So we went a different route. Our reactors are designed to operate in a controlled chaos state. The fluctuations you're seeing, those are intentional. We're constantly making micro-adjustments to the magnetic fields, playing the plasma turbulence like a musical instrument." It's technically more complex from a control systems perspective, but it lets us use much simpler materials. "But the stress on the containment vessel," Vexthal began, "is well within tolerances," Torres interrupted gently, "because we designed the tolerances around the stress, not the other way around. The containment vessel is built to flex, to absorb those fluctuations. It's like the difference between a rigid wall and a shock absorber. Your approach is the wall, solid, unyielding. Ours is the shock absorber. It moves with the force instead of resisting it." Vexthal's mind raced. It was elegant, in a chaotic sort of way. Primitive materials managed through sophisticated control systems rather than exotic materials with simple controls. It shouldn't work, except that it clearly did. "And the weapons?" she asked. "Same principle," Torres said. "You're probably used to particle beams or energy weapons, right? We use those too, but our railguns are the primary ship-to-ship armament. Yeah, the electromagnetic forces are huge, but the barrels are designed to be replaced regularly. They're expendable components. We carry spares. It's cheaper to swap out a barrel every few thousand rounds than to build the whole weapon system out of exotic materials that can handle unlimited firing." "You build weapons that destroy themselves?" Kreenak interjected, his voice clicking with disbelief. "We build weapons that wear out," Torres corrected. "There's a difference. Everything wears out eventually. We just design around it." Captain Chen leaned back into view. "As for my crew's biological distress, Commander, I assure you we're quite healthy. You're probably detecting the normal human stress response to our environment. Yes, we run higher oxygen levels than most species you've encountered. Yes, our cardiovascular systems operate at what probably seems like a frantic pace to you, but that's normal for us. We evolved on a high-oxygen world with significant gravity. Our biology reflects that." "Your home world must be extraordinarily harsh," Vexthal observed. Chen's expression became something the translator labeled nostalgic. "Earth? Yeah, she's a demanding mother. 70% ocean coverage, active tectonic system, dynamic weather patterns, significant axial tilt causing seasonal variations. We've got deserts that can kill you from heat, polar regions that can kill you from cold, jungles so dense you can't see 3 meters ahead, and mountain ranges that reach into the upper atmosphere. And that's just the geography, the ecosystem." She smiled. "Let's just say that humans aren't the apex predator on Earth. We just learned to be the smartest." "You're not the dominant species on your own planet?" Kreenak asked, shocked. "We're the dominant sapient species," Chen clarified. "But pound for pound, there are plenty of Earth animals that could kill an unarmed human. We compensated with intelligence and tool use. It's probably why we're so adaptable. We had to be." Vexthal processed this information. A harsh homeworld, physical fragility compensated by intelligence, engineering solutions that prioritized simplicity and replaceability over exotic materials and elegant design. The humans were beginning to make sense, though they remained profoundly alien in their approach. "I have one more question, Captain," Vexthal said. "Our vessel employs advanced stealth systems. How did you detect us?" Chen's smile became predatory. "Because we weren't looking for you specifically, Commander. We were looking for anomalies. Your stealth systems are impressive. They mask your emissions, bend sensor waves around your hull, make you effectively invisible to active scanning. But space isn't empty. There's always some level of background radiation, particle density, gravitational fluctuation. Your stealth systems create a hole in that background, an absence where there should be presence. Our sensors are designed to detect patterns and anomalies. You were an anomaly." "That's remarkably clever," Vexthal admitted. "We've had a lot of practice hiding from predators," Chen replied. "You learn to think like they do, and then you learn to think one step ahead." Part 3. The Proposal. The conversation might have ended there. A pleasant first contact, an exchange of information, perhaps the beginning of diplomatic relations. But fate, as it often does, had other plans. The alert came simultaneously on both bridges. Vexthal saw Kreenak stiffen as his sensors blazed with warnings, and on the view screen she saw Captain Chen's expression shift instantly from pleasant to professional. "Multiple contacts," Chen said crisply. "Bearing 273 Mark 45. Configuration unknown. They're charging weapons." "We detect them as well," Vexthal confirmed, her own tactical displays updating rapidly. 6 vessels, destroyer class. Configuration matches. Her central nervous cluster went cold. Matches the Zelkath swarm. She saw Chen's eyes narrow. "I take it that's bad?" "Very bad," Vexthal confirmed. "The Zelkath are a parasitic species. They reproduce by implanting their young in other sapient species. They've destroyed 4 civilizations that we know of. The hegemony has been tracking this particular swarm for 3 standard cycles, but we've never had sufficient military assets in position to engage them.
And now they're here, Chen observed. She was already moving, issuing orders to her crew with calm efficiency. Helm, evasive pattern delta. Weapons, warm up all batteries. Communications, send a burst transmission to Fleet Command. Contact report, location, enemy composition. Engineering, I need everything you've got.
Captain, Vexthal said urgently, your ship is not equipped for this fight. The Zelkath are fielding 6 destroyers. Your vessel is alone. You should retreat while— Commander, Chen interrupted, her voice like steel. We don't abandon new friends to parasitic horrors. That's not how humanity works. She paused, and her expression shifted to something calculating. Besides, you said you've been tracking them. That means you have intelligence on their capabilities, tactics, weak points. We have weapons and a ship built for fighting. Seems to me we could help each other. Vexthal felt a surge of respect for this strange, impossible human. You would fight beside us? You've known my species for less than an hour. You're sapient, you're not hostile, and you're about to be attacked by something that sounds like it crawled out of humanity's nightmare fuel, Chen said flatly. That's all I need to know. What do you say, Commander? Want to see what an impossible human warship can really do? Vexthal's mandibles clicked in what humans would have recognized as a fierce smile. Transmitting tactical data now. And Captain, thank you. Save the thanks for after we survive, Chen replied. Indomitable out. The view screen snapped back to tactical display, and Vexthal turned to her crew. Battle stations. Coordinate our point defense systems with the human vessel. This is going to be interesting. The Zelkath swarm didn't bother with communication. They simply attacked. Their vessels were organic nightmares, grown rather than built, pulsing with bioluminescent patterns that served as both communication and targeting systems. They moved with disturbing fluidity through space, their weapons ports opening like hungry mouths. The first salvo was a cloud of biological projectiles, living missiles that would seek out heat signatures and burrow into hulls, releasing their parasitic payloads. Vexthal watched as the Indomitable responded. Every point defense system on the human ship opened up simultaneously. Streams of tracer fire created a web of death in the space between the ships and the incoming missiles. The kinetic rounds moved at relativistic speeds, and when they connected with the biological projectiles, the results were spectacular. Explosions of flash-frozen organic matter expanding in brief, beautiful spheres before dissipating. Impressive accuracy, Krenak observed. Their targeting systems are compensating for the missile's evasive maneuvers in real time. Add our point defense to theirs, Vexthal ordered. Create overlapping fields of fire. The infinite scrutiny was not a warship, but every Chromath vessel carried defensive armament. Their particle beams lanced out, precision instruments compared to the human ship's brutal kinetic weapons. Together, they created a barrier that the first wave of Zelkath missiles could not penetrate. But the Zelkath had expected that. The second wave came in behind the first, larger, armored missiles that had used their smaller brethren as shields. Half a dozen broke through the point defense barrier. "Brace for impact!" Vexthal called. But the impacts never came. Instead, the Indomitable did something that Vexthal had never seen before. The ship rolled, actually rotated on its axis, and brought its main railguns to bear on the incoming missiles at point-blank range. The railguns fired.
The electromagnetic accelerators that Vexthal's scans had deemed impossible to operate hurled projectiles at a significant fraction of light speed. The tungsten penetrators hit the armored missiles and didn't just destroy them, they annihilated them. The kinetic energy conversion was so complete that there was nothing left but expanding plasma.
Impossible, Krenak whispered. The reaction time required, the precision.
Humans, Vexthal replied, and found that word was explanation enough.
The Zelkoth destroyers were closing now, their own weapons coming into range. Energy beams lanced through space. Biological lasers grown from living tissue, less powerful than manufactured weapons, but requiring no technological infrastructure. The Indomitable jinked sideways with thruster bursts that should have liquefied its crew under the G-forces. Vexthal's sensors showed that the inertial dampeners on the human ship were adequate but not exceptional. The crew was experiencing accelerations that would have rendered most species unconscious. Yet they kept fighting. Captain Chen, Vexthal opened a comm channel. Your crew is experiencing dangerous acceleration forces. You need to... We're fine, Commander. Chen's voice came back, strained but steady. Humans can handle up to 9 Gs for brief periods. We're only pulling 6. Uncomfortable, but manageable. 6 gravities. Vexthal herself could barely handle 2 before her central nervous cluster started to shut down. "You're insane," she said, with something that might have been admiration. "So we've been told," Chen replied. "Now, watch this." The Indomitable rolled again, and this time all 6 of its main railguns fired in sequence. The targeting solution was perfect, each round streaking toward a different Zelkoth destroyer. But the Zelkoth vessels were nimble, grown for speed and maneuverability. They dodged, their organic sensors predicting the trajectories and moving their ships out of the path. Except the railgun rounds weren't the real attack.
"Missile launch!" Krenak called. 48 missiles away from the human ship! Vexthal understood immediately. The railgun shots had forced the Zelkoth into evasive maneuvers, and Chen had predicted exactly which maneuvers they would make. The missiles weren't aimed at where the Zelkoth ships were. They were aimed at where they would be after dodging the railgun fire. It was tactics several moves deep, and it was beautiful. 3 of the Zelkoth destroyers took direct hits. Human missiles, Vexthal's sensors told her, were crude things, simple fusion warheads with basic guidance systems. But they were effective. The nuclear fire washed over the organic ships, and their biological hulls couldn't withstand the radiation and heat. They died screaming across the electromagnetic spectrum. The remaining 3 Zelkoth vessels changed tactics. They split up, each one attempting to flank the human ship from a different vector. "They're trying to divide our fire," Vexthal observed. "Captain, we can take the one on the upper Z-axis if you handle the other 2. "Negative, Commander," Chen replied. "You stay in our defensive umbrella. We've got this." What followed was a display of ship handling that Vexthal would later struggle to explain to her superiors. The Indomitable didn't just fight the 3 remaining Zelkoth destroyers, it danced with them. Chen used her ship's engines in ways that Vexthal hadn't imagined possible. The fusion drive didn't just push the ship forward. Chen used it as a weapon, angling the exhaust toward one Zelkoth vessel and forcing it to break off its attack run or be cooked by superheated plasma. The maneuvering thrusters fired in complex sequences, spinning the ship through 3 dimensions while maintaining firing solutions on multiple targets. And through it all, the railguns kept firing. The barrels were glowing now. Vexthal could see it on thermal imaging. Metal heated to near failure points by the electromagnetic forces coursing through them. But they kept firing, each round precisely targeted. each shot forcing the Zelkath to react, to move, to dance to humanity's deadly tune. "Barrel 3 has exceeded thermal limits," she heard Engineer Torres report over the comm channel she was monitoring. "She's done after the next shot." "Then make the next shot count," Chen replied. Barrel 3 fired one last time. The round caught a Zelkath destroyer in what passed for its engineering section. The organic ship convulsed, its bioluminescent patterns flickering and dying as critical systems failed. "Barrel 3 separation," Torres reported. "Clean ejection. Deploying spare. 60 seconds to operational." They were actually replacing the weapon barrel, in the middle of combat, while being shot at. It was the most absurdly practical thing Vexthal had ever witnessed. The two remaining Zelkath destroyers made a final, desperate, coordinated attack. They came in from opposite vectors, firing everything they had: energy beams, biological missiles, even kinetic spores that would attempt to infect the target ship's hull. The Indomitable's point defense systems blazed, filling space with lethal projectiles. The Infinite Scrutiny added its own fire, particle beams cutting through the biological weapons with surgical precision. But some attacks got through. Vexthal watched as energy beams scorched the Indomitable's hull, ablating armor plating, exposing internal structures. "Hull breaches on decks 4 and 7, she heard Torres report. "Emergency bulkheads holding, damage control teams responding." "Keep me in the fight, Chief," Chen ordered. "Always, Captain." The human ship's remaining railguns tracked the two Zelkath destroyers, waiting for the perfect moment. The Zelkath were committed to their attack runs now, unable to maneuver without losing their firing solutions. "Fire," Chen said quietly. 4 railguns spoke as one. 4 tungsten penetrators crossed the distance in fractions of a second. 2 rounds per target. The first Zelkath destroyer simply came apart, structural integrity failing as the penetrators punched through vital organs, the biological equivalent of reactor cores and control centers. The second destroyer took its hits in the forward section, destroying its sensor clusters. Blinded, it tumbled through space, firing wildly. "Finish it," Chen ordered. A single missile streaked from the Indomitable's launchers. Without sensors to detect and evade it, the Zelkath destroyer never had a chance. The fusion warhead detonated, and the last enemy vessel joined its fellows in death. Part 5. Aftermath. For a long moment, there was silence on both bridges. Then, slowly, Vexthal's crew began to make the clicking sounds that indicated respect and admiration. "Status report," Chen was saying on the human ship. "Casualties?" "Minor injuries on Deck 4, someone reported. Medical is handling it. No fatalities." "Damage?" "Hull breaches sealed," Torres replied. "We lost some armor plating, and Barrel 3 is scrap, but we've got Barrel 7 installed and calibrated. We're at 87% combat effectiveness." 87%. They'd just fought 6 hostile warships and were still at 87% combat effectiveness. "Commander Vexthal." Chen's face appeared on the view screen again. "Status of your vessel." "Undamaged," Vexthal replied, still processing what she'd witnessed. "Thanks to you." Chen smiled, and this time Vexthal recognized the expression. Relief mixed with satisfaction. Teamwork. "Your point defense took out at least 30% of their missiles. We couldn't have managed that alone." It was a generous statement, and they both knew it. The Indomitable could have handled the fight solo, but Vexthal appreciated the gesture. "Captain Chen," she said formally, "on behalf of the Chromath hegemony, I extend our deepest gratitude. You saved this ship and its crew. We are in your debt." "No debt necessary," Chen replied. "But I wouldn't say no to an exchange of diplomatic credentials.
I think our species should get to know each other better.
Agreed. I am transmitting coordinates for our nearest diplomatic station. I will personally recommend that the hegemony pursue formal relations with humanity.
We'd like that. Chen paused, then added with a smile. Besides, you've piqued my curiosity. If our impossible ship impressed you, I'd love to see what you consider normal. Maybe we can learn from each other.
I suspect, Vexthal said thoughtfully, that we have much to learn from you. Your approach to engineering, your tactical philosophy, your sheer audacity. It's unlike anything we've encountered.
That's humanity for you, Chen replied. We don't always follow the rules. Sometimes because we don't know them, sometimes because we think they're wrong. We've spent our entire history being told what's impossible, and we've spent that same time proving otherwise.
Vexthal's mandibles clicked in amusement. I've noticed. Tell me, is your entire species like you, like your ship?
Chen's expression became thoughtful. We vary, like any species, but there are some traits we share. We're stubborn. We're adaptable. We don't give up easily. And we really, really don't like being told something can't be done. She grinned. It's gotten us into trouble more than once, but it's also gotten us to the stars.
A dangerous combination, Vexthal observed.
For our enemies, certainly, Chen agreed. For our friends. She gestured at the debris field that had once been Zelkath destroyers. Well, you've seen what we do for our friends. Part 6. Understanding. Over the following hours, as both ships ran post-battle diagnostics and began the process of recovery, Vexthal and Chen continued their conversation. What had started as first contact had evolved into something deeper, a genuine exchange of ideas and philosophies.
May I ask, Vexthal inquired during one of their calls, about your ship's name? Indomitable. Our translation systems render it as impossible to conquer or defeat. Is this typical of human naming conventions?
Chen smiled. Our warships are often named after virtues or qualities we admire. Indomitable, relentless, courageous, vengeance. It's a tradition that goes back thousands of years to our ocean-going navies. The name is meant to embody the ship's spirit, to inspire the crew.
A psychological tool, Vexthal mused. Clever. The Chromoth name our ships after mathematical concepts. The infinite scrutiny, the calculated response, the logical conclusion. It reflects our cultural values.
Which tells me something interesting about your species, Chen observed. You value precision, analysis, logical thinking. You approach problems methodically. And you don't? Vexthal asked, genuinely curious. We do, but we balance it with intuition and improvisation. Sometimes the logical solution isn't the best solution. Sometimes you have to trust your gut, take a calculated risk, or try something that seems crazy because the safe option isn't working. Like designing a reactor that operates in controlled chaos, Vexthal said. Exactly like that. We looked at the logical solution, exotic materials, stable operations, and decided it was too expensive and too fragile. One component failure and the whole system crashes. So we went with something that seemed unstable but was actually more robust because it was designed to handle instability.
Vexthal processed this. It's a philosophy born from your homeworld, isn't it? Earth, with its dynamic systems and harsh conditions. You learned to thrive in chaos.
That's probably part of it, Chen agreed. Earth doesn't do stable. Our weather patterns are chaotic. Our tectonics are active. Even our moon is large enough to create significant tidal forces. We evolved in a system that was constantly changing,
constantly challenging us. Adaptability wasn't optional, it was survival. And you carried that adaptability into your technology, your tactics, your culture. We did. It's made us a little unconventional by galactic standards, I'm guessing.
Vexthal's mandibles clicked with amusement. That is an understatement, Captain. You are perhaps the most unconventional species we've encountered. But after today, I would say also one of the most effective.
A thought occurred to her, and she tilted her head in curiosity. Tell me, what did your people think when you first encountered evidence of other sapient species, when you realized you weren't alone? Chen's expression became distant, nostalgic. It was complicated. Some people were excited, others were afraid. There were those who saw it as a threat, and those who saw it as an opportunity. But I think the dominant feeling was relief. Relief? We'd spent centuries looking at the stars, wondering if we were alone in the universe. The idea that we might be the only conscious minds in all of creation was lonely, terrifying even. When we found evidence of other sapient species, it meant we were part of something bigger. We had neighbors. Chen smiled. Even if we didn't know yet whether those neighbors would be friends or enemies, at least we weren't alone.
Vexthal felt something resonate in her own neural clusters, a recognition of shared experience. The Chromoth felt similarly, though we approached it more analytically. The statistical probability that we were alone was low, but confirmation was still significant.
See, Chen said warmly, common ground, that's where friendship starts.
Friendship, Vexthal repeated the word. Yes, I would like that, Captain Chen. Friendship between our species.
Then let's make it happen. I'll recommend to my superiors that we pursue formal diplomatic relations, share technology, culture, maybe even establish trade routes. Humanity is always interested in new friends.
An exchange of knowledge, then. Both sides benefit. The best kind of arrangement.
Part 7. Revelations. It was Kreenak who made the next significant discovery. He'd been analyzing the combat data, running it through the Infinite Scrutiny's tactical computers, trying to understand exactly how the Indomitable had achieved such devastating effectiveness against superior numbers. "Scan Master," he called, his voice tight with excitement. "You need to see this." Vexthal moved to his station, her eye clusters focusing on his displays. "What have you found?"
"I've been analyzing the human ship's tactical decision-making during the battle, specifically the timing of their maneuvers and weapons fire. Look at this." He displayed a timeline of the engagement, with each human action marked and time-stamped. "Now, overlay this with the Zelkath response times," he continued. A second layer of data appeared, showing when the Zelkath ships had reacted to each human action. "Do you see it?" Kreenak asked. Vexthal studied the data, and her central nervous cluster went cold. The humans were acting before the Zelkath committed to their maneuvers.
Exactly. Not by much, we're talking fractions of a second in most cases, but consistently, throughout the entire engagement, Captain Chen was making decisions based on what the Zelkath were going to do, not what they were doing. Precognition? Vexthal wondered aloud. Some form of future sight? I thought the same initially, but no. Watch this specific exchange here. Kreenak highlighted a section where the Indomitable had fired its railguns to force the Zelkath into evasive maneuvers, then launched missiles at their predicted positions. The captain didn't predict the future, she predicted the Zelkath. She analyzed their capabilities, their tactical doctrine, their likely responses, and she made decisions based on that analysis. In real time, while under fire, while experiencing 6 gravities of acceleration. That's... Vexthal struggled to find words. The cognitive processing required is far beyond what we assumed possible for an organic mind, Krenak finished. Scanmaster, I think we've been underestimating human intelligence. We saw their primitive materials, their crude engineering solutions, and we assumed they were technologically inferior. But their brains, the way they process information, make decisions, predict outcomes, it's operating at a level we didn't anticipate. Vexthal thought back to her conversations with Captain Chen. The quick understanding, the adaptive thinking, the ability to make intuitive leaps that still landed on correct conclusions. "They're not just intelligent," she said slowly. "They're intelligent in a different way than we are. The Chromoth think linearly. We analyze data. We calculate optimal solutions. We execute plans. It's efficient, but also predictable." "And humans?" Krenak prompted. "Humans think in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Linear analysis, yes, but also pattern recognition, emotional intelligence, intuitive leaps, creative problem solving. They're not following a decision tree, they're mapping an entire decision forest and finding paths we wouldn't even see." "Which explains how they defeated the Zelkath," Krenak said. "The Zelkath are also linear thinkers, highly efficient predators, but predictable in their tactics. Captain Chen understood that predictability and exploited it." Vexthal made a decision. Compile this analysis. Sanitize it of any tactical specifics that might compromise human military security, but preserve the core findings. This is going to change the hegemony's entire assessment of humanity. "They're not going to believe it," Krenak warned. "Then we'll show them the battle footage. Let them watch an impossible human ship defeat 6 Zelkath destroyers with no support and minimal damage. Let them see humans operating in conditions that should incapacitate them, using technology that should fail, achieving victories that should be impossible." Vexthal's mandibles clicked with fierce satisfaction. Humanity has proven that our understanding of what's possible needs revision. Part 8. The Departure. 3 standard cycles later, both ships were ready to part ways. The Indomitable had completed its repairs, including the installation of a fresh railgun barrel for the one destroyed in combat. The Infinite Scrutiny had finished compiling its data and was ready to return to Hegemony Space with its report. "Captain Chen," Vexthal said during their final conversation, "it has been an honor serving beside you, however briefly." "The honor was ours, Commander," Chen replied warmly. "You trusted us when you had no reason to, fought beside us when you could have run. That's the mark of a true ally." "Your species has a saying, I believe. Actions speak louder than words. You showed us what humanity is capable of. I suspect that revelation will ripple through the hegemony for some time." Chen's expression became thoughtful. "Can I ask what you'll tell them? Your superiors, I mean." Vexthal considered the question carefully. "The truth. That we encountered a species that defies conventional understanding, that builds impossible machines and makes them work through ingenuity and determination, that thinks in ways we're still trying to comprehend, that fights with a ferocity born from a harsh homeworld but tempered with honor and compassion." She paused. "And that the Chromoth hegemony would be fortunate to call such a species friend rather than foe." "That's quite an endorsement," Chen said softly. "You've earned it. Though I suspect," Vexthal added with a click of amusement, "that you'll give our diplomats headaches. Humanity doesn't fit neatly into any of our established categories." "We've never been very good at fitting in," Chen agreed. "But we're excellent at finding common ground. Tell your diplomats to come prepared for unconventional negotiations. We'll meet them halfway. I will. And, Captain, thank you for everything. Stay safe out there, Commander. The galaxy is a dangerous place. So we've learned, though it's less dangerous now that the Zelkath swarm has been eliminated. Vexthal gestured at the debris field, still visible on long-range sensors. Thanks to you. Thanks to us, Chen corrected. We fought together. Remember that when you write your report. Humanity makes a better ally than enemy. That, Vexthal said with absolute certainty, will be the central thesis of my report. They exchanged final pleasantries and formal goodbyes. The view screen went dark, and Vexthal turned to her crew. Navigation. Set course for the Hegemony Diplomatic Station. Best speed. Course laid in, Scanmaster. Execute. The infinite scrutiny turned gracefully and accelerated away, its drives leaving a faint signature across the electromagnetic spectrum. On the Indomitable's bridge, Captain Chen watched them go. Interesting people, her first officer observed. Very, Chen agreed. Smart, honorable, a bit rigid in their thinking but willing to adapt. We could do a lot worse for first contact with a galactic civilization. Think they'll recommend formal relations? Commander Vexthal will. Whether her superiors listen, Chen shrugged, we'll find out, but I suspect we made a good impression. We usually do, her first officer said with a grin. Eventually, after we scare them a little. Chen laughed. True, there's something about humanity that seems to unsettle the more orderly species. We're chaotic, unpredictable. We break things that should be unbreakable and fix things that should be unfixable. We're also still here after 10,000 years of trying to kill ourselves, the first officer pointed out. That has to count for something. Stubbornness? Resilience. I'll take it. Chen settled back in her command chair. Resume patrol course. And someone get me a fresh cup of coffee. I have a feeling we're going to be writing a lot of reports when we get back to port. Epilogue. The Report. 3 standard months later, in the Grand Assembly Chamber of the Chromoth Hegemony's High Council, Scanmaster Vexthal stood before the 7 members of the ruling body and delivered her report. The chamber was a marvel of chromath architecture, geometric perfection, optimal acoustics, lighting calculated to reduce eye cluster strain. Everything was ordered, logical, precise. Into this ordered space, Vexthal introduced chaos. Honorable counselors, she began, I stand before you to report on first contact with a species that defies all conventional categorization. I have designated them as a Class 7 threat and a Class 9 opportunity. The council members' mandibles clicked in surprise. Class 7 threats were existential dangers to the hegemony. Class 9 opportunities were potentially civilization-changing discoveries. To assign both classifications to a single species was unprecedented. Explain, First Counselor Morcath commanded. Vexthal activated the holographic display and began to walk them through her encounter with humanity. She showed them the indomitable, explained the impossible engineering, displayed the combat footage, and presented her analysis of human cognitive capabilities. The council watched in silence, their eye clusters widening as the presentation continued. When she finished, there was a long pause. "You're certain of these findings?" Second Counselor Othrel asked. "This isn't some form of sensor malfunction or translation error?" "I have verified the data 17 times," Vexthal replied, "and I spent hours in direct communication with the human captain. I am certain." "They're dangerous," Third Counselor Vosnal observed.
A species this unpredictable, this capable of violence.
And yet they fought beside us, Vexthal interrupted, a breach of protocol that made several counselors stiffen. Forgive my interruption, honored counselor, but this is important. The humans had no obligation to help us. They had known of our existence for less than an hour. They could have retreated and left us to the Zelkath. Instead, they chose to fight. They risked their ship and crew to protect strangers.
A tactical decision, Fourth Counselor Len Mock suggested. They gained valuable intelligence on the Zelkath. They gained, Vexthal countered, hull damage, expended ammunition, and the attention of a species they had never encountered. The tactical calculus does not favor their decision. No, honored counselor, this was not tactics. This was ethics. Humans have a strong moral framework that compels them to protect others. A exploitable weakness, Fifth Counselor Daxrin noted. Or an admirable quality in an ally, Vexthal replied. Which brings me to my primary recommendation. The hegemony should immediately pursue formal diplomatic relations with humanity, establish embassies, negotiate treaties, begin cultural and technological exchanges. And if they prove hostile? First Counselor Morcath asked. Vexthal met his gaze steadily. Then we will have made an enemy of the most dangerous species we've ever encountered. Which is why I recommend we make every effort to ensure they remain friendly. Honorable counselors, I watched a single human warship defeat 6 Zelkath destroyers. I witnessed engineering that shouldn't work but does, tactics that shouldn't succeed but did, and thinking that operates on levels we're still trying to understand.
She paused, letting that sink in. Humanity is going to be a major galactic power. That's not a question. It's an inevitability. Their adaptability, their ingenuity, their sheer determination will carry them forward. The only question is whether the Chromoth hegemony will be their ally or their obstacle. I strongly advocate for the former.
The council members conferred among themselves in clicks and whistles too rapid for Vexthal to follow. Finally, First Counselor Morkoth spoke. Your recommendation is noted, Scanmaster Vexthal. We will deliberate on this matter and issue a decision within the standard period. You are dismissed with commendation for your service.
Vexthal bowed and withdrew, knowing she'd done all she could. 3 days later, the decision was announced. The Chromoth hegemony would extend an offer of formal diplomatic relations to humanity. When the news reached the Indomitable, Captain Chen smiled and raised her coffee cup in a solitary toast. To new friends, she murmured, and impossible possibilities.
Across the galaxy, in her quarters aboard the Infinite Scrutiny, Scanmaster Vexthal received the notification and felt her mandibles click in satisfaction.
The humans had been right about one thing. They were very good at finding common ground.
And the galaxy, Vexthal suspected, would never be quite the same. Humanity had been scanned. Their impossibilities had been witnessed. And the verdict was in. They were exactly as dangerous, as unpredictable, and as valuable as their impossible ships suggested. The age of human expansion into the greater galaxy had begun. And it would be one hell of a ride.